in a Regis.
Well,
In Youngkin's district.
in Youngkin's district, that's right.
Glenn Youngkin's home district, and so
that did make it just that much more sense.
yeah. So sweet. And although some people who used to be represented by RIP have lost him as their delegate, I know many of you who are in that situation still have great respect and fondness for RIP, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I've been with you all the 10 years in your district. So without further ado, we are delighted to have Rip Sullivan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So give yourselves a hand. We won 2 majorities. Way to go. Great day for Virginia. And we are deep in the planning process for exactly what the next couple of years are going to look like. I've got a button you can push, and I'll give you my stump speech. I don't know if you give that speech anymore. Some of you probably heard it 6 times. So yeah, but it's all about parents and things like that. So, but I think we're here to talk about other issues tonight. I'll just tell you generally, you know, the caucus, both caucuses are working hard to get ready. I've said already to several of you, only half jokingly, that the hardest part of the session is going to be learning everyone's name, because the turnover, because of the redistricting, is I think it's fair to say it's historic, and that obviously is terrific. The chamber, particularly my chamber, keeps looking more and more like Virginia as a whole, which is great. And there's nothing wrong with being a freshman legislator. We were all freshmen at one time. But having said that, it does create some challenges. I was running some numbers with a few people in the during the cocktail hour, and for instance, on the committee that one of the committees I sit on, probably the committee that concerns this group the most, we only have 4 returning Democrats, and we will need 12 on the committee. Some of those may be current incumbents. We'll have to move them over, but not that they won't know anything, but they won't have any experience, obviously, on the issues that this particular committee deals with. And it's a committee that, this is the Labor and Commerce Committee. We will rename it. I think we already have. It's been renamed several times. It was always Commerce and Labor for a long time. And Commerce and Labor always is the wrong word to use in the Virginia General Assembly, because that's 400 and some years. But for a long time, it was Commerce and Labor. Then when we got the majority, we renamed it Labor and Commerce. Then when they got the majority, they named it Commerce and Energy. And this year it will revert back to Labor and Commerce with an energy subcommittee, which some of you may remember. I had the pleasure of chairing when we were last in the majority. I wish I could tell you for sure that I will again, but at the moment, all I can say is I certainly hope I will. Joanne Ward will be chairing the committee, as she did last time. I was vice chair last time. I have speakers that made those decisions yet, but so if anyone has Don Scott's phone number, you make it. I've told him how much I want to reprise that role. So I certainly hope it works out. So we're busy getting ready. The committees are starting to come together. One thing you should all know, show of hands, who's been actually down to visit us in Richmond? Almost everybody. You're gonna be really happy this year. The new building. It's almost embarrassingly nice. Yeah. But I have now been there 10 years, and I can tell you that the building I started in, the old GAB, if any of you ever go back that far, has a special place in hell waiting for it. It's just fair to describe it as a dump. It's terrible. Half of the building was well known for being full of asbestos. The other half of the building was well known for some other poison that was around. I can't remember what it is. Everyone was always sick. It was terrible. The Pocahontas building was a sort of, you know, cut and paste, everything held together by duct tape. This new building, 10 years in the making, is beautiful. It's just going to be more comfortable for everybody. Most importantly, folks coming to visit us. It actually has food, and it's got a pizza oven for you to see.
Oh my goodness.
And a place to caffeinate, and places to sit and talk. And the members' offices are all lovely, but they are not ostentatious. And maybe the best thing about them, you know, every session there was always this game of musical offices, because some of the offices in both old buildings were spacious and nice. Some of them were just awful. The old office number 100 was about the size of this carpet. And so everyone would want to move. Most of these offices are pretty much, you know, the same. The speaker's office is different and things like that. So anyway, come see me. I'm in 908, and I hope you'll come see me. I'm busy trying to, you know, move in, and the whole place for a little while is going to be a little. If anyone's ever lived through a renovation, you know there are things that are going to go wrong. There are, you know, punch list items that need finishing. We are ready to go. We are ready to go. There's one. So let's see. We win the election. Everyone's very excited. We got freshmen who, like every freshman, me included, you know, they were elected to change the world. They've got great ideas. They got bills up the union they want to put in. And we have majorities, so we can pass them. There's one big difference between this year and 4 years ago. And he lives a few hundred yards away, you know, in the governor's mansion. So we do have, you know, a different analysis that we have to go through when trying to decide what to do. And maybe just as importantly, what not to do, or if we do it, what are our expectations? They're clearly going to. And by the way, we have 51 downs in the House, 21 in the Senate. Those are, I don't need to tell anyone here, civics class. Those are razor thin majorities. You know, when I was caucus chair with 55, it was hard to keep the caucus all on one page. With 51, not only do we have to worry about things like, well, can this delegate live with this particular bill in her particular district, but we got to worry about, well, in fact, someone said this on the phone call the other day, and don't anyone, you know, break your leg or get sick or, you know, have, you know, or have your water pipes burst. You know, two people don't show, and we've got a problem. One person doesn't show, we've got a problem. So there are different dynamics here in play, and with respect to the government, there are going to be some things that we are very hopeful. You know, I'll speak for myself, at least I'm hopeful that we'll be able to find some common ground on, even I hope in the energy space. There are some things that we just know we won't be able to. And those will be sort of, you know, message bills, politics bills, make him veto them type bills,
exactly.
so that you know, LeVar or Abigail or whoever, and us can run on those in 2025. And then there's going to be some bills in the middle that, you know, we're not quite sure about, and will require some, you know, maybe long conversations with the administration. And I have to say, I've got a whole slew of bills in the environmental space ready to go, and so I don't have a corner on that market. Others do as well. But what I've been preaching for the last 2 years, I know I've talked to probably most of you about this. Last 2 years, we've really been playing a lot of defense.
Yep.
Right? We know they want to repeal the Clean Economy Act. We know they want to repeal the Clean Cars Bill. Obviously, look what they're doing with Reggie. And so I and we have been reticent or cautious is a better word about opening up those bills, Clean Economy Act and others. because the way the system works in Virginia, if you send the governor, here's the Clean Economy Act, if you send him a bill that moves one comma, you can send back amendments to the whole thing. You can change yes to no, you can agree. And then we got to deal with that on the floor when it comes back as an amendment in April. And we got one extra vote. We don't want that stuff to pass. So there's risk in trying to be too aggressive. Now, having said that, those of you who know me, I'm just a congenital glass half full kind of guy. It's the only way to get out of bed in the morning. And so I think this is the session with a new some new muscle to flex to start at least trying to do things that we now learned after the Clean Economy has been in law for 3.5 years. I knew when we passed it. Everyone knew when we passed it. It wasn't a perfect bill. Everyone knew when we passed it. I talked openly about it. But here you are passing a piece of legislation that's supposed to take us through the next 30 years. Well, you know that in 2020, everything's going to look different in 2025, 2030. So this is a living, breathing thing that we need to revisit. We need to update. The difference in my way of looking at it and the governor's way of looking at it is he had a bill that would require updating the Clean Economy Act in 2 years, which for him was code for let's repeal it and start over.
Right.
So I have told a bunch of advocates, some of whom are sitting in this room, that this is a year to start thinking about improving based on experience and things that we've seen, things like the Clean Economy Act, and to try to turbocharge, can you use that in electric world? I don't know. The Clean Cars Bill, and to do some other things in the environmental space that I think could be really helpful. It could turn into a giant swing and miss, a bunch of giant swing and misses. This governor is squirrely. He's squirrely. He doesn't have a whole lot of friends in the General Assembly, but certainly not a whole lot of friends on the Democratic side, and he hasn't done a lot to try to change that.
Just the opposite.
Yeah,
He's trying to make ends.
yeah. So we're gonna one foot in front of the other type stuff. We're gonna see what happens, and we'll see how the process plays out. In theory, we could pass anything we want out of the Labor and Commerce Committee. Not 100% sure of that because, as I said, some members can get anxious on some issues. But we got to make some decisions, and I'm interested in your folks' views of this as well. Not only tonight, but during session. Okay, where do we want to compromise? Where do we want to risk a gubernatorial amendment? Where do we want to plop a bill on his desk and make him veto it? These are questions we have to ask ourselves, I think, with every bill that comes through the entire General Assembly and certainly through the Labor and Commerce Committee. So it's just a year to be thoughtful and careful. Having said all that, my list of bills is about this long.
Can't wait to hear.
I mean, my phone and email is just exploding during the last week before, I guess it was last Thursday's deadline. Last Thursday was the deadline for what we call pre-filing bills. There's flex in the joints. You can still put bills in, but they're not, quote, guaranteed to be ready by the beginning of session. We have 5 extra bills. So in an emergency, if we've left something out, someone of you has some great idea that just occurs to you tonight, all is not lost. We can still get bills in. But my phone was just ringing off the hook with people wanting me to put in pieces of legislation ranging from, I don't want to say small, but not earth-changing bills, but also some very important, potentially world-changing bills. And they just please put it in RIP, please put it in RIP, and we'll worry about who's going to carry it later. What I worry most about is we won't find anyone to carry it later.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I don't want to become this session's Scott Sorrow, if any of you know. Scott's got this. I don't know when he sleeps. He'll have a portfolio of 60 bills or something. A I've talked to him, he's not gonna be able to do that this year. But right now I got too many bills, so I'm looking for some freshmen to carry some, I'm looking for some existing colleagues to carry some. But, you know, with my heart and soul is in a lot of this environmental stuff, and I'll probably jealously guard most of those. We continue to carry them. So you had a list you wanted me to talk about, but just off the top of my head.
So give us some examples.
Sure. Well, you know what I really ought to do? What I really ought to do is tell you, I'm carrying a bill that some woman named Ivy Main drafted.
There you go.
So why don't you tell them what's in the bill, Ivy?
Which bill are you going to carry?
I'm carrying the two bills you sent me.
Both?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
One is to do data centers.
Just go for it.
And I'll let you explain it in a second, but I will tell you that I actually think this is a very cool bill, and you know, I have friends in the data center industry. I don't know that they're going to love it, but I'm not convinced they're going to hate it, and here's why. The bill, we all know how politically fraught data centers has been. That issue has become, right? Yeah, you know, there are people gathered in living rooms in Prince William right now having very different conversations. But this bill does not, unless you tell me I'm reading your bill wrong, it isn't a bill that says we hate data centers go away, or we're shutting down the data centers. What it says is that's a different political argument, perfectly legitimate political argument. But if, Governor, we're going to have data centers, let's make sure they're energy efficient. Let's make sure these big sucks of power suck as little energy as possible. Because data centers are being used, of course, as a crutch for trying to blow a hole in the Clean Economy Act. So let's make sure data center is as energy efficient as possible. This fits beautifully with. I mean, I've been sort of the General Assembly's energy efficiency nerd since I got there. So I'm thrilled about that. But what have I left out? Oh, well, the generator. They can't have generators, right?
That's the last part, but also
Kerosene,
that the renewable energy procurement.
Yes. So that's how I read the bill. It is not an anti-data center bill per se. It is if we're going to do them, let's do them right. That the last sentence, I think, or the second to last sentence is, "Thou shalt not have a diesel generator as backup."
Right, but then there was also the procure
Yes.
carbon-free renewable energy from the grid.
Yeah.
To run the data center, so.
I have one thing it's not in the bill right now. Maybe we should put it in the bill. What do you think? I mean, it won't solve all of our problems, but why wouldn't every data center just have a solar array on the roof? I mean, they can't power them. Well, they can try. Sure, they can. Well,
The hope is that if you get them off the diesel generators, they'll use on-site solar and batteries instead. But
Well, tell them to buy into the wind project.
I tried that one with Amazon.
Well, too bad about that.
But anyway, I'm so
that
grateful.
goes
Thank you so much, because having you, that will be taken very seriously. I don't know, I mean,
well, that's nice of you to say.
I don't know that the governor will look more kindly on it, but
I can't. There aren't a lot of bills coming through with them names on them.
Yeah. But I think, if we set up an expectation, if leadership of the Virginia General Assembly tell data centers, we expect you to meet the maximum efficiency standards that we know, PUE, that we know that Google and Amazon are already making, and procure renewable energy on the grid, as we know you can do, and some of them are. That seems to me a totally reasonable expectation, and it's not requiring them to do it. Saying if you want our tax incentives, at least that's what I was put.
By the way, just so you know, last Wednesday or Thursday, I was with Amazon and the folks at AWS, and I gave them a little preview of this bill.
Oh, did you?
And their hair didn't catch on fire.
Good.
Wow, amazing.
They might be just being polite, we'll see, but,
We've been talking to Google, and I mean, Google's an industry leader, so that's how we know that this is doable.
so,
Wonderful, thank you.
what else do I have?
So the other one was the interconnection, solving that.
Yes, I put that in, I expect to
Thank you.
carry that.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
I appreciate that, 'cause that's a big,
It's
just a
it's
huge
just
part
a
of
hu-
the,
It's a huge problem.
Can you say a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem for the schools in elementary.
Yeah, absolutely, we got this solar industry that caught fire when we passed the bill, and now it's kind of stuck.
Well, we required them to do net zero energy, and now they're getting charged these huge sums from Dominion, and they're like, well, we gotta choose, is it the kids or the net zero?
Yeah.
What a horrible position to be in, since both is for the kids.
For the kids, I like the, it's a good pitch, it's a good pitch.
That's a really
That's
good-
Nancy Pelosi there.
So
Yeah.
the idea would be to fix that by charging them, should they not connect them within the 30 or 60-day timeline for both commercial and residential?
I think that's the hammer in there.
so that deals with the slow walking that's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
This part is really just allocating the expenses so that the schools or the developers are responsible for all of the interconnection costs on site. And if Dominion wants fiber optic lines or fancy other upgrades to its substations as part of the interconnection, it can go to the SCC and ask for it.
Exactly.
And so take that do that as part of their grid mod.
Yeah, wasn't it part of the grid mod to begin
They've
with?
already got authority for so much else.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
Really?
So,
just specify this and then that they.
Right.
that
Nickel
goes
and
by
to
the way,
enterprise.
speaking of the SCC,
Yes.
no
very
question in my
young.
mind, the number one sort of under the radar issue in this last election, is the 2 open SCC seats.
Mhm.
It was not an issue, that I could, get in front of even a bloodthirsty Democratic audience and get people excited about.
Well, you could
Immigration
this one.
Commission, which no one's ever heard of, most people have never heard of. And as you all know, I think embarrassingly, last session, we were unable to fill those 2 seats.
Yeah,
I
really.
think that was an institutional failure on our part, and even a divided General Assembly, 1 House Republican, 1 House Senate, we should have come up with.
And I thought you had a solution, and then it just all blew
Yeah.
up.
So here was the solution. The solution, of course, ended up being a pretty simple one. You pick one, we'll pick one, until frankly, the other side said, fine, you pick one, we'll pick one, but you better not pick this one. Meaning, here's,
Classic.
we get veto power.
Right.
So that's not, so, there are a lot, it's a priority, there are a lot of names circulating. Poor Jamal Hudson, who's the lone SCC judge right now, is obviously eager for relief.
So who are some of the names that you've heard?
You wanna be on?
Yeah.
You, that's number 1.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Ivy, you want to be on?
No.
The only name I'm comfortable talking publicly about would be Angela Barrow, who was in my, treated shabbily. She was on the SEC. We named her to the SEC. And by the way, I was there. I was chairing the Energy Committee at the time. All of the Republicans said to me, both publicly and privately, she's great. We got no problem with her.
And then
Among other things, she helped write the Clean Economy Act. But then, just as political payback, they took her off for no reason at all. They didn't actually, just it softens it a little bit. It's not that they took her off, but they didn't reappoint her.
Let it turn.
So as far as I'm concerned, and I've been very public about this, and certainly striding with all my colleagues, Angela has sort of a right of first refusal as far as I'm concerned. If she wants it back.
Is she interested?
Well, that's the rub. It's now been whatever it's been, 2 years. She's gone on with her life. I think she's started her own business. I think she's making a little money.
That's no.
So it's not good. So it's,
What's there?
put it this way. She and I talked. I told her we need to know sometime soon. I'll be a little surprised if she says yes. But I'll be
To
thrilled, and I'm gonna try to twist her arm, cause I think she's terrific. But beyond Angela, there are a lot of good possibilities out there. Folks who, I'm not gonna.
We
get into
are
this.
recording, so.
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
get into it.
Okay.
But there are a lot of good names here, but nothing set yet. So if anyone's got any suggestions, obviously I come at this, and as a practical matter, I think it's fair to say, certainly recently, since I've been there, in the 10 years I've been there, let's just say the environmental, energy issues that the SCC deals with have kind of driven the bus. But it deals with banking, it deals with insurance. The SEC has a broad portfolio,
Yeah.
now a new health insurance exchange. So whoever the person is, isn't necessarily going to be, doesn't have to be at least some great environmental advocate. But if I have anything to say about it, and I think I will, he or she at minimum will have sensitivity to the important work the SEC does.
Is it a full-time position?
Oh, yeah.
So it's a job.
It's a real job. Frankly, they call they are judges. They oversee an administrative law docket. Interestingly, the Constitution only requires that one of them be lawyers or be a lawyer.
And Hudson is.
So Jamal's a lawyer.
Okay, so they fulfilled that with.
Yeah.
The one.
Yeah. Now I think as a practical matter, the sort of default usual. I can't remember the last one who wasn't, but it's not technically a requirement.
And was Hudson appointed by Democrat or Republican?
Yes, by us.
Okay.
Well, I would hope at minimum they would have some knowledge in utility regulation
Yeah, sure.
and be
Yeah, I know.
sensitive to, vigorous review of utility IRPs and rate cases and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. And
Sharon, do you want to share our statement of?
funny you should ask. We're putting together a sort of a draft value statement that the commissioner should be knowledgeable when utility regulation open to vigorous review of utility IRP and rate cases and other submissions to the SEC, committed to holding utilities accountable for adhering to the Virginia Clean Economy Act, including the goal of zero carbon emissions by 2050, willing to promote energy efficiency and expand solar energy capacity, committed to fair and just lease cost rates and reducing the energy burden for those most negatively impacted. That isn't ideal, obviously, but that's what we'd certainly like to see.
Are you applying? The goal, of course, is to try to get this done relatively early in the session. And obviously, we don't have to squabble or fight with the Republicans here. But my earlier comments about even Dems can fight amongst themselves, gonna have to, fight's the wrong word. We're gonna have to have a conversation with our friends in the Senate, try to come to some joint agreement. And I'm confident we will. I'm not sending any alarms that we won't be able to do. We will fill these 2 seats. And by the way, for those of you, if the governor can't do any of that.
We only have a few more minutes for your prepared remarks, so if there are other topics.
So I look like I have prepared remarks. I'm making this up as I go.
Well, before we have some Q&A, if
Oh,
there
sure.
are some
Yeah,
other
just
topics
any other hot pieces of legislation that you're either patroning or you see it just we hearing things
sure.
because we're on various working groups. There are going to be some proposed amendments to the VCEA. I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about that.
So I'm going to carry the Advanced Energy United bill.
Yeah.
Excellent. Talk about what that is.
So it's got a laundry list of things, and this is a scary bill for me personally, at least, because it does directly opens up the Clean Economy Act. Making it susceptible to gubernatorial mischief. But among other things, it will raise caps. It will make clear that the 30% in the VCA is a floor and not a ceiling. It'll raise caps that have already been met. It will trying to remember
Distributed generation.
Yeah,
increased
exactly.
From 1 to 5%.
1 to 5, because we've already hit 1. And this, by the way, just like, I'll pivot for a moment and talk, I'll also be carrying a bill on shared solar, which is another area in which,
Great.
one interesting thing, one looks in vain for anything good in the governor's energy plan. And the word on the street is that when it went into the governor's office, it was 150 pages long or something, and had all sorts of great stuff. And it came out 20 pages long.
What, after we were done?
All the it mentions energy efficiency once and says we need to quote study it. Stuff like that just hurts my eyes. But the words shared solar are in there.
Yeah, no, that
when
ridiculous,
it gets
yeah.
to talking about distributed generation. So, and I had a really cool experience 2 weeks ago, last week, whatever, at the ribbon cutting for the first shared solar installation down in Waynesboro. It's getting ready to open. I met a bunch of interesting people there, but the most interesting was the farmer, the guy who owns the property. And I spent some time talking to him, and he was just so enthused about the project and made very, very clear that the revenue stream, the reliable every year revenue stream, was going to enable his family to keep this farm.
Yep.
They were still going to go, I forget what these guys got several hundred acres. The array takes up something like 30 maybe. They're going to have sheep beneath it, so livestock.
Solar sheep.
That revenue stream is not subject to Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And he made very clear that this had saved his farm. And if I have anything to say about it, I'm bringing this guy to the hearing.
Yeah.
So it's done by a company called Dimension. But one of the things about shared solar is because of the way the SEC's been interpreting various things, including the interconnection charge. That's not what it's called in shared solar.
The minimum bill.
Minimum bill, thank you.
Yeah.
Frankly, we've only been. This is not a terrible thing. The companies have only been able to make it work using the sort of exclusion from the minimal bill that's in there for people below a certain income level.
Yeah.
The demand, the program is fully subscribed. So start talking about market forces.
Wow.
We're already out of room. Solar companies are here. They want to do this. They tend to be a little less controversial from a siting perspective because they're smaller. They help farmers, but we need more room. So this bill will raise the, don't ask me the number because I can't remember. They will raise the cap that's in there because we've already hit the cap. And the bill makes an adjustment to the way Dominion or the SEC would calculate a minimum bill. And the best example the best sort of argument I can come up with for why that has to change is here we have our friends at Dominion, who love to brag about how low their rates are. They've got the highest minimum bill in the whole country.
Of course.
How does that compute, right? So this is an attempt. We've already crossed that threshold. Shared solar is working. The governor likes it. The market is telling us that this is something people want. Let's unlock this even further. And that'll be the pitch.
And
That'll be the pitch for this bill.
And Scott Serval will be carrying the Senate.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And by the way, this also will expand. Right now, shared solar is only authorized in Dominion's territory. This will expand it to Appalachian. So that's another one. Here's one. This has been in the weeds. And that it's not really a sexy bill, but it will be very interesting to see. And I stole this, I didn't steal it, she offered it to me, from a woman who's in the Maryland legislature, and they passed it last year. And it relates to PJM, and the way PJM works. And I call it, I think she calls it, the PJM transparency bill.
Help everybody understand who PJ.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we are, Virginia is one of 13 states, Ivy, I think. That are parts of PJM, which is a regional transmission organization, an RTO. And so, sometimes the power you get, that bulb gets, might be coming from Pennsylvania. They move power around, stabilizes the grid, every state's grid. And obviously all the utility companies participate in PJM. And there's a whole, as you might expect, it's a big organization, and there's a whole governing structure, some of which it looks a little like, I don't know if it looks like the General Assembly, but you've got almost I think they can even call it a board, and then you have subcommittees from which issues burble up about how they're gonna distribute power, where they're gonna emphasize types of power and such. And Dominion, of course, is an active player. But all of the conversations and the votes that happen at the subcommittee level are they're confidential, but no one knows who voted how. It's a little like rollback time in the General Assembly. For a long, long time, no votes in subcommittees were not recorded.
Yep.
Subcommittee kills a bill, no one knows how, why. This is before video. All this bill really does is say, okay, we're gonna record those votes, or we're gonna, Dominion has to tell us how they voted, because they are on the subcommittee, so that we can see how PJM is working. Well,
Just
transparency.
can we actually affect PJMs?
This would be, no, the obligation will be on Dominion to tell us how they vote.
So it'd be just how Dominion votes.
I think that's right. Yeah, we can't. I'm not sure we can tell PJM. I don't remember, to tell you the truth, but they've already passed it in Maryland and several other states.
Sounds great.
Which isn't necessarily a selling point in government.
Yeah, right.
But,
Especially
they haven't passed it in California, so I don't have to make that argument.
Rick, before we go to general Q&A, one thing I wanted to ask, which is of interest to all of us, is I know there's some, again, the tweaks back to the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which would address energy efficiency provisions. And some of those that have been very distressing to many of us is the fact that there's a four-part test as to whether something.
Yeah, the Advanced Energy United Bill
Correct.
changes that.
And you're carrying it, so I would love you to speak to that, as well as perhaps the
Well,
EERS.
Very early in my career, we had a fight over the tests, and we got rid of one of them. And that was a heavy lift at the time. What the bill now does is take it down to one test, which candidly would make it easier for the energy efficiency project to be approved by the SEC. The Clean Economy Act, and this was one of the was it a concession? Yeah, it was a concession that we had to make to get votes and get it through. The EERS sort of gets rejiggered in 2025 and is left to the discretion of the SEC. The bill I'm going to carry will address that by making some direction about how much it has to go up every year. I think it leaves the SEC's discretion going forward and sets a minimum for how it's got to keep.
It's a big change.
Yeah,
guys.
really.
We get that far.
Keep your fingers crossed, because the government doesn't like energy efficiency. So, all this makes me nervous, but excited. Last thing, and then I'll take your question. EVs. As you all know, we have an EV rebate program in Virginia. It just doesn't have any money. So I'm not carrying that bill. I don't know whether David Reed is. I'm not sure who is, but we will be running a bill to fund the EV. To fund that. Those of you who are familiar with the federal federal money coming our way for chargers, and it is coming our way. One of the things I was very worried about was that the administration would just sort of forget to apply for the NEVI money, which is the National EV Infrastructure Grants, billions of dollars coming from Washington. They have in fact applied for them. But one of the things that's interesting is at least in the initial 2 or 3 years, the focus, and I think this is an understandable policy choice. The focus for where chargers will go is on the interstate highway system. The goal I think is every 50 miles, chargers within 1 mile of the interstate highway system. So get out a map of Virginia, you're talking about 95 South, you're talking about 66 West, you're talking about 81 South, you're talking about 64. The big arteries, right? And so that's great. But none of you will be surprised to hear that the biggest, aside from just the Republican Party in general, within the Republican Party, the biggest naysayers of the whole EV bill are those representing parts of rural Virginia, and for a variety of different reasons. But when you really distill it all down, it's kind of this is an urban Northern Virginia thing. You guys don't travel very far. You guys have a lot of money. There's no way EVs are coming to rural Virginia. Besides, we won't be able to charge them. So I had a bill. I've now run it twice. I'm going to run it again this year, which and it's going to require some money. So that's obviously a challenge. But which would specifically say, you know what? We want EVs everywhere, not just in Northern Virginia, not just down in Hampton Road. We need rural Virginians themselves to have EV chargers, and we need rural Virginia to have EV chargers, so that all those tourists from Tennessee or Maryland or wherever nearby who want to go down to our beautiful southwest parts of the state will have confidence they can charge their EVs down there. So this bill would say, here's some money, get out ahead of the feds and say, here's some money. It's going to help companies build EV chargers, install EV chargers in rural parts of Virginia. Cool. Because I frankly do think we need, the Northern Virginia parts of the world need to say, just as we've done in the solar world, right? I had a bill a couple of years ago which said, because I get a lot of grief, I'm the guy who wants to denude the common law, take out all the forest land and the ag land. Northern Virginia, you're not going to do your part because you're just dumping all this solar on us. So we had that bill that we ran that allows localities to install solar on
Brownfields.
roofs, brownfields,
Coal.
trash dumps,
Old coal.
old landfills, parking lots, so that Northern Virginia can do its part. Yeah, we don't have 1,000-acre tracts, right? But where we can, we will do it. And that's a little bit how I see the EV bill. We don't want this just to be ours. This needs to be, we need to get rural Virginia. By the way, I have this theory that I believe that what's going to say is the wrong word. What's going to get EVs across the goal line in parts of Virginia that aren't Northern Virginia is the Ford F-150. It is a work of art. Talk to anyone who owns one; they love them. And it's the most popular car in Virginia. It's the most popular car in the country, I believe. And certainly, it's a lot of F-150s around here too. But certainly, in rural parts of Virginia, it is everywhere. And these are really cool pieces of technology.
So it's the gas version you're saying is all.
Oh, I'm talking about the
EV
EV.
version.
The F-150 Lightning, it's called. It's an amazing. People love it.
Okay.
You can't imagine. Who's got an EV? The torque on it's incredible, so its towing capacity is incredible. It's got all the room you need. It's got forgetting the term, but reverse power ability. So you can plug your house into your truck, right?
Yeah.
When your power goes out, you can use your truck for like 2 days. I think my car does that too, but I have no idea how. I'm one of these guys, just like my phone, if my car does 100 things, I know how to do 3. But all sorts of cool things.
So Rick,
Anyway,
we thought we'd
I'm
take
sorry, I
maybe
overstayed my
5
welcome.
minutes. No, maybe 5 minutes of Q&A.
I have two questions
Two,
from we have 11 people on Zoom who
Sure.
are joining us as well.
hello
Um,
Zoom.
And the one question was the data center bill that you're gonna carry, is that following along the points of Ivy's recent column?
Oh, yes,
And
written by IBB.
Randy Freed suggests, he said that something about if we could specifically authorize local governments to require a firm commitment to be supplied by zero carbon electricity. So I don't know how far you can go in that as a condition for rezoning or special use permits.
There are a bunch of data center bills.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Danica Rome in the House and Suhas Subramanian in the Senate. Both say they.
In the Senate.
Yes.
In
In
the
the
Senate.
Senate. Both are in the, so I don't know the scope of all of the bills, but Danica says she's got 6 bills.
Yeah, that sounds like
And Suhas has 4.
And then
or
Randy
5,
mentions Delano Brianna Sewell might be
Mhm.
interested.
Delegate.
You mean Congresswoman Brianna?
We've also talked to Josh Thomas,
Mhm.
who's
Oh, yeah.
a new delegate from.
He's got one, he hasn't told me what it is yet. But those have to do more with
Site.
where you can have them,
Right.
Right.
whether you should have them. I mean, that's, Prince William is just, is a boiling pot right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And, one wonders whether the data center industry has overplayed its hand.
Yeah.
But the governor is, of course, in love with data centers. As, frankly, almost any governor probably would be. They bring a lot of money to the state, right? And we are, the capital of data centers, and but they present
Nobody-
all sorts of problems.
Nobody's
environmental
counting
problems.
the externalities.
Of course they
right?
have.
So, question, do you see any future for allowing cities to do stretch codes, building codes and things like that, or high performance building standards?
I see in the future. So one of the bills that's probably on my that I put in, and I'm just not sure I'm gonna have room for it. I put in a benchmarking bill.
Yeah. I know you've done that in the past, and I was hoping you were gonna.
And it one thing I just don't understand, and I've tried to get people in the room to talk about it. A lot of these huge developers, the JBGs of the world,
Yes.
and the Trammell Crows of the world, right?
Yeah.
The giants of the commercial real estate industry live with benchmarking ordinances in DC and in Chicago and in New
Philadelphia,
York,
New York.
Philadelphia. And the world
They
hasn't
do
ended.
net zero in
They
Philadelphia,
come
New
here
York.
to Virginia and suddenly they can't have this.
Right.
Because, it's a national security risk.
Yeah, right.
Now, that's a little different than what you asked, but so I put it in for drafting. I just don't know whether I'm gonna have the bandwidth for it, but that's one of those things that I think we just ought to be able to get that passed. If nothing else, it doesn't say thou shalt benchmark. It just says Arlington can benchmark if they decide to.
Right, exactly.
What
So
committee would that go to?
probably county cities and towns.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
We've heard that Boy Scout was gonna likely carry that again in the Senate, but
Oh,
don't
she
know.
hasn't told me that, but she doesn't have any implications. It's not like it's my bill, although it's kind of my bill.
I don't know.
I've been the only one brave enough so far. But that's not really your question. Your question had to do more with codes.
Yeah, so,
And-
I mean,
and,
so we've had the experience of, the building code folks, we
Oh,
get all
I
these people to testify. Oh, no, well, it has to be unanimous, and so therefore we're not gonna accommodate the most energy efficient new building codes. And, we've been doing this since I've been working on this since 2017. I mean, come on. The crisis is getting better? Really? Wow, cool, we don't have to do this anymore. How lucky we are. And I just can't figure out why, we couldn't get it through Northam and all that, and then now, we've got these problems. I'm like, when is this ever going to happen?
Well, there's a,
I mean, it's the cheapest fuel.
oh yeah, well, I say this with respect to energy efficiency all the time. I mean, it's just not sexy, right? I mean, windmills or spin and solar arrays, so that's sexy, renewable energy stuff. Energy efficiency is, caulking windows and stuff like that. So it's just, people don't believe that it's really important. It is as important as anything we can do, because, the old adage, right? Cheap, best power is the stuff you don't have to pay for.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you remember, it was killed by the Senate, including some Dems.
Yeah.
So but it's a very different Senate now. So I think once we change governor, that would be, I think we'll have to wait for that.
Bill
Then-
Penn.
Well, maybe it's time to start doing
Yeah,
little
no,
messaging
no,
bills,
Bill and I-
education.
Bill and I have been talking
Yeah,
about this for a long, long time.
A tortured soul over this.
I know,
Yeah.
it is, I know. And part of it, of course, is that, so sometimes the way to get something started is to say, localities can make this decision. And that's less scary because someone voting for it doesn't think it's gonna happen in their locality.
Right,
That would be-
exactly.
That's a stretch code.
The problem is frankly, the sort of parade of horribles that the opponents have been able to use successfully, I guess I'll say, is, well, but what if Arlington's is different than Fairfax's is different than Alexandria? We got this patchwork. That would be
And if
the
you're a
end of
big
the world.
JVG, you deal with differences from Philadelphia to New York to Chicago to wherever, so,
Or agree to upgrade
Yeah.
the state code,
Well,
yeah, really,
right?
that would be even
Instead-
better.
Right,
Yeah.
if instead of.
Yeah, if you don't wanna do stretch goals, well, I'll tell you what, once you upgrade everything, then you'll have them all consistent.
Well, the analogy I like to use, I'm not sure it's perfect, but the other argument, of course, is, oh my God, if you make us do all this, the crazy expensive housing we have will become just that much more expensive.
That's
Nobody
what-
will
that's what
buy,
the bill
no one will buy a house.
Pennies in a 30-year
So,
mortgage, so
the-
that won't.
that reminds me of, this would have been late 60s, maybe, early 70s, when the Fed started saying, okay, we want you to put airbags in cars. And no one will buy a car, it's too expensive, this is terrible, it'll kill our industry. Now they compete for who's got the most airbags in their car, because that's what people want in their cars, right? And this is a
Or
little like that.
Cameras and
Yeah.
everything.
So I'm gonna we have time for one more quick question. And then we're gonna let Ivy identify just one or two top bills that she's seeing that maybe we haven't identified. And then we have just a few orders of business that we have afterwards. So, John,
Well, can I ask a quick question on the SCC? What are the prospects of not just appointing 2 new judges, but 4? I mean, aren't you authorized to go up to 5 members?
We are. That bill's been in there before. I don't know, John. Does anyone here, I'm not putting that bill in, I don't know if anyone else is.
That would have to be done via a bill that expands it?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, we can't just, the Constitution says up to 5, no less than 3, up to 5. And there's a statute adopted, 50 years ago,
Gotcha.
that sets it at 3.
Gotcha.
One of the bills last session that I dreamed of actually would have temporarily expanded it to 4, because one of the roadblocks in the negotiations that we were having with the Senate was that one of the open seats only had a year left on it. It was Ms. Yagner's seat, and the other one had 5 years left on it. So not only do we have the issue of who gets to choose the names,
Right.
but wait a minute, I want my candidate to get the 5-year seat.
Right.
You get the 1-year seat. That was, so I actually dreamed up a bill that would have used that provision in the Constitution and say, okay, for purpose, we're gonna expand it to 4. We're gonna appoint one person to a 6-year term, another person to that 5-year term. And then we're gonna do away with the seat that had 1 term left in it, doing away with that issue of,
Right.
significant differences
I
in
remember
term.
that.
That bill was teed up and ready to go.
And that's when they said. we-
Everyone agreed that, we will pass it, we gotta do that when we come up with the names. And no, it wasn't a veto, it was just we never came up with the names. But that was not so much to expand it to 5, it was to solve that little
Right.
temporary problem. I don't know. I don't know what the governor would do with that. That has public budget implications, not dramatic ones, but people cost money. These
Plus the
people,
staff
these
to go
people
with
have staff, exactly.
I have a
Um,
very quick question back to EVs. You
Yep.
talked about getting funding. Would that include the clean school bus grant funds that are needed? Or is
It's
that
not
a
my
separate-
bill, you'd have to ask David Reed, but it's been described to me as funding just the,
The credit.
rebate on these. I don't know whether anyone's putting in a
That's the
budget.
question that was asked.
I
And
don't know. I
anything.
don't know.
and
As
then-
you may have noticed, if y'all are, looking at the bills on the computer. I think only with a couple of exceptions, people, probably freshmen who made mistakes. Members of the Democratic caucus have not started putting in their bills.
Yeah.
With the exception of the first, we got 2 bills and 2 constitutional amendments that are sort of our messaging bills to start things, but everyone else has been asked. We did this last time we had the majority. Let's wait. One of the things we've done in the past, which is silly, is there are a lot of good ideas. We've had 5 members put in the same bill. Right? That's kind of that. We're gonna try to squeeze out the duplication. We're gonna try to squeeze out, if we can, bills that the general consensus within the caucus is probably not a smart bill to do for one reason. I'm gonna try to convince the delegate that he or she shouldn't do it, which is a tough lift because people, we're Democrats after all.
Yeah.
Well, Rip, thank you so much. Ivy, do you have 1 or 2?
Yes, Rick got
Other-
almost everything.
Yeah. Just to kind of round us all
Almost.
out.
B+,
If
sorry.
I can just, for those who don't know, Ivy is a member of the Sierra Club Legislative Committee and
We're gonna need the club this year.
our esteemed colleague, and she is the she co-chairs the Renewable Resources Group and is just an excellent resource. And if you haven't read her blog or don't subscribe to her blog, Power for the People, I highly recommend it because it is so well written and she's so on target with so many important issues, data centers being a recent great blog. So Ivy.
Thank you, Sharon. Well, the first bill is one you guys had a lot to do with because when I had talked to Barbara Favola a week or 2 ago, she had said she didn't have room to carry a solar bill. And then lo and behold, after she heard from you guys, suddenly she had room for a solar bill. So this is what happens when you guys get to work. So it's awesome. And so she's gonna bring back a bill that she carried 2 years ago that did pass the Senate that requires new public buildings to have solar ready roofs with some exceptions, but that's the gist of it is if you're gonna build a new building or you're gonna do a major renovation that the new roof should be ready to take solar, meaning you're clustering your equipments in one part of it, you're using the right membranes, you put the right equipment in. You don't actually have to do solar, but you're leaving money on the table if you don't. So that she had been trying to get that for schools, and that's kind of the perfect place for solar because the demand and the benefit is so great. And so 2 years ago, when she had worked this, she had gotten buy-in from VML and VACO, so the counties and cities were on board, and the school superintendents had at least agreed not to oppose it. I can't remember if they actually supported it, but so it passed the Senate 2 years ago and then got killed by
Kathy Barr.
Kathy Barr. I think that might have been right. So that's coming back, and we are very hopeful about that one. The other bill that I've heard of is on bill financing. for both
Yes,
solar and energy efficiency. And I'm told that SELC is working with Hashmi on that one. It's a little, so we had tried on-bill financing some years ago, and the problem is that if you've got both, if you've got gas heating, then a whole lot of the upgrades would actually affect your gas bill, not your electric bill, so that made the economics a little more difficult. These days, as people are switching to heat pumps, there's a much better case for it. Dominion didn't want to do it a few years ago. They said we're not in the business of doing that. But Duke Energy apparently has signed on to something, and Duke and Dominion are very close. So they're trying to work that out. I think that would be really interesting. It would mean that if you're doing upgrades in your house, you can pay for them through your utility bill. So that would be just huge for people who can't afford the upfront costs. So
That's the key.
so I hope that gets some traction. And I do know of a few other bills, but Sharon told me I can only mention two, so.
See her after.
So, the leadership team has been involved with a lot of the small working groups. Many of them are Virginia Conservation Network members, whether it's Southern Environmental Law Center or what have you, and also industry groups like Advanced Energy United. So we've been really plugged into what's bubbling up, and there's some great stuff bubbling up. We're very excited about it. And what I really want to just say is over the next couple of weeks, we are going to continue through working with these groups, talking to you with, we will be identifying 4 or 5 bills that we are going to actively support this upcoming session, in addition to the bills that we will defend, like clean cars and that sort of thing. Our hope is that we'll still use the same criteria we've used in the past, which is likelihood that there is an opportunity to pass. There is coalition support for it, so we're not trying to do this on our own because we're small. And 3, that if it isn't likely to pass, it's a good education year. We need to educate the legislators on what we're working on. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And so what we'll be doing is after we're reviewing these bills that I've got a little spreadsheet going, you know, we'll come back to you guys and say, this is what we're looking at. This is what we think is the best. We'll give you guys a little opportunity to comment on it and give us some feedback, and then we'll start going with it. So we're pretty excited about the session, and we're very excited about what you're going to be able to do in the House now, Rip, that you guys are back in control, and we hope you have a big leadership position on labor and commerce with the energy subcommittee. The other things I wanted to mention as we're wrapping up this meeting is that, you know, 2 things really. We are looking to expand our membership beyond Northern Virginia. We are very Northern Virginia heavy. We don't know who's going to be the new members on the Commerce and Labor and Commerce Committee, but Rip, hopefully maybe you've got some sense. You know, we're hoping that Josh is going to be a member. We think he would be, you know, personally fabulous. But as we,
which Josh are you talking about?
we're talking about Josh,
Thomas.
Thomas.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a meeting with
Got a
Josh
couple of
Thomas.
Joshes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Not
Old
Josh.
Josh caucus.
That's right.
And Josh Cole would be good as well.
But in any event, what we'd love for you to tell us is, do you know people in other jurisdictions who might be interested in our working group? Just remember, we don't work year round. We're part-time, and we provide you with the calls to action. So it's easy, you know, we make it really easy and fun for you guys. And we also would ask you, bring somebody else new to the next meeting. Get somebody engaged. We really need to continue to increase our engagement. Scott, I'm going to talk to you in just a minute.
Yeah.
Scott, why don't you introduce yourself? It's brand spanking new.
Scott Barstow, fellow Alexandria, representative Kathy, and work with her through the Cities Environmental Policy Commission for.
Welcome. And the second thing we'd like to ask is that we are looking for people who might want to help us on the leadership team. Data centers are huge. As we heard, Danica's got 6 bills going. we are not going to be able to get behind every bill, but there is a whole separate coalition of folks that are involved in only data center related bills. So if anybody out there is interested in helping us out, joining the leadership team, helping us on the leadership team, particularly with data centers, we'd really love to have you. So I think those are my, have I done my public service announcements, everybody?
I think so.
I think that's it. I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Amy. Oh, next meeting.
I don't have that date.
Our next meeting is going to be, what did we decide, you guys?
January 8th.
Thank you, January 8th. But you'll be hearing from us before then, and you're certainly going to be getting some information about bills in the meantime. Do we want to say anything, Meredith, about filling out the form that we've been sending out to everybody and why it's important?
Yes, we have tried to get an update of people's interests. So there is a form that also will allow us to match you to your current representative and your new district, because it's a little tricky now to even reach out to you. Perhaps I have a new representative. How do I get hold of them until they're sworn in? And but we're also transitioning from our Google group, which we very fond of for blasting out our calls to action and newsletter, but we have committed to using Action Network. It is going to allow us to better match some of our actions to constituents. So when we're targeting a particular committee members, we'll be including messages on your constituent and so, but again, we're looking for help to cover the data center issue, but honestly, Dennis, who we have relied on as well, is looking for help. So not necessarily with our working group. We've transitioned to putting our calls to action on Action Network. It's working well. I know the Money Out folks use that platform as well. But anybody's got technical interest, maybe helping some of the other groups figure out their calls to action.
See Meredith on that. So this is just a plea, fill out that form because it gives us the address, and when we get your address, we can figure out who your legislators are, and then we can
And
target.
it's up on our website, which is a corner of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition.
Thank you, Amy and Doug, for having us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Just if there are things that we haven't mentioned that are passions of yours or things that you would like to kind of take on for leadership, either indicate that on the form or talk to us. You know, our bandwidth is pretty well filled, but we do have this reservoir of activists that can be put behind something you're interested in. But we sort of require that if you have something like that, that you take on a lot of responsibility for moving that forward. Okay,
Great.
all right.
See y'all in
I hope
Richmond.
everybody has a fabulous
Come on down.
rest of the year, holiday season, and yeah, see you in
Come on down. See you in Richmond.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ari. Please.
Bye-bye.
The only rhyme or reason is that the Senate is on.
Rita, I'll try to get your question answered if you hang on a second.
So,
Be on that.
I have a question about solar.
There'll be other ones coming. It's really- it's lovely.
There's something I know that you don't know about.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I got Billy Spinks decided on the walk. You know, my office.
Well, I was gonna ask about Dominion Energy.
They'll be
nice.
Well, that's, I think what she's talking about is the interconnection bill. That's right, they're by requiring just outrageous upgrades. The expensive of what they're wanting for the interconnection 'Cause
Are you
essentially-
talking about my question?
And are there bills that? Yeah. Are there bills that will be addressing?
Yeah, so that's what Rick was talking about, that's the one it is. So anything between 250 kilowatts and 3 megawatts right now is shut down by these interconnection requirements. So yes, it's a really, really good one.
Can you hear me? Amy?
Yes.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Were you talking to Ivy about my question?
Yes, I was talking to Ivy about your question and she said there is a bill to handle that. It's a interconnection problem. It's Dominion has put up all these requirements that if you're gonna hook up distributed solar, there's all these fees and requirements that makes it exorbitantly expensive, and that's what shut down all the projects. So there
Yeah,
is a bill to
no,
address that.
I'm aware of that. I'm at the Soil and Water Conservation Conference. I had information. It wasn't like just a question, it's more like information. And I was a Dominion shareholder.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing. So did you have a question?
I was hoping to be more interactive, especially with the delegate that was speaking, because I'm aware of what the problem is. I want to work on solving it. And I'm a Dominion shareholder that's connected with other Dominion shareholders. And I was talking with somebody from Dominion today and connecting with her about this issue.
Okay.
And also about the Chesterfield gas plant too. And I just wanted to let just trying to network and connect these different silos of people working on it, where people are like, oh, there's a problem, and it's like there's other people that are aware of the problem that are doing the work. Like we all need to work together to solve it. Yeah, on the inside of Dominion and saying, like, knock it off. And I'm aware of a shareholder getting ready to do a resolution that's going to be part of the solution for this. So, but I can connect with you afterwards.
You can, and I'm also a shareholder, and I would be very happy to sign on to whatever you have.
Yeah, do you know Ruth Edmondson?
Share so that I could do stuff like that.
Do you know Ruth? Do you know Ruth? Let's just talk later, Amy.
It will. It's gotten really noisy in here.
Yeah, let's talk later. Okay.
Kind of limited interaction, but thank you for hanging in there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.